A call on Government Order of the Day number 4.
Dairy Industry Restructuring Amendment Bill interrupted debate on second reading.
When this bill was last being debated, Eugenie Sage had the call. She has just under 5 minutes remaining. So the Dairy Industry Restructuring Amendment Bill, I call Eugenie Sage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When the House adjourned, I was explaining that Mr Ian McKelvey's criticism of my colleague Stephen Browning was misplaced. Mr Browning was explaining why the Green Party opposed this bill. It was not an attack on Fonterra. As our largest company, Fonterra is important to our economy. We want it to flourish and we want it to be in the dairy business long term. What we have criticised is Fonterra's current business strategy and the relentless increase in cow numbers and milk supply, because that fails to recognise that there are environmental limits to growth, given dairying's serious impact on our waterways and on our climate. Mr Speaker, the results of yesterday's vote on trading among farmers was not an overwhelming mandate. The fact that 1 in 3 shareholders rejected TAFE highlights the depth of concern about what this bill proposes. And Mr Speaker, that's because for Fonterra, the cooperative structure has been a huge part of its financial success. When the 3 main players in the industry, the New Zealand Dairy Co-op, the Kiwi Cooperative Dairies and the New Zealand Dairy Board, were merged in 2001 to create Fonterra, there was a deliberate decision to establish it as a cooperative. That was seen as the best way of protecting farmer interests. Because, Mr Speaker, in a cooperative, you've effectively got an alignment between the interests of the supplying farmers, of the processing and the marketing arms of the company, and the fiduciary duties of the directors, so that the cooperative members receive the best possible price for the milk they, their cows and nature produce, and that's been certainly reflected in the high dairy payouts. Providing for trading among farmers cuts across this. It creates a significant risk for the future of New Zealand's dairy farmers and for Fonterra, because when a dairy farmer sells her units into the TAFE fund, she is selling her rights to the dividend and also the equity in the cooperative. While the farmer will certainly retain the mutual supply and collection contract with the company and voting rights, he or she is giving up the stake that those shares represent in the financial ownership of the milk tankers, the milk processing plant and other cooperative plant. And, Mr Speaker, that's where the risk lies. It risks introducing a tension between what the Honourable Shane Jones has called the producer capital and the investor capital, those external investors who own the dividends from these unit shares. And as the independent advisor James Morrison to the Select Committee noted in his report, those tensions will inevitably arise between the farmer suppliers to Fonterra, the external investors and the fiduciary duties of the board of Fonterra to those investors. So there's going to be potentially ongoing conflict between investors and the supplying farmers over the company's strategy and the company's operational decisions. And there's a risk, Mr Speaker, that over several decades the ownership of Fonterra and its key strategic decisions become increasingly separate from dairy farming. So, Mr Speaker, the stated purpose of these TAFE shares is to provide a capital base to use as a buffer against redemption risk. But submitters who oppose it said that that redemption risk had been overstated. It had been sold to farmers on the basis of one extreme year when we had the Sandloo scandal, drought and the global financial crisis. So those submitters and those who voted yesterday against trading amongst farmers framed it as a choice between keeping Fonterra New Zealand owned or making it a target for large-scale investors who have been more interested in the dividend returns from their shares. And, Mr Speaker, that is the risk, that this is the top of a slippery slope which will lead to more corporate investment, overseas investment, which would weaken the voice and potentially overwhelm the farmer milk producers. That's why the Green Party opposes this bill.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. Party vote. The clerk will conduct a party vote.
New Zealand National.
59 votes in favour.
New Zealand Labour.
Votes opposed.
Green Party.
14 votes opposed.
New Zealand First,
8 votes opposed.
Māori Party,
3 votes in favour.
Mana,
1 vote opposed.
ACT New Zealand,
1 vote in favour.
United Future.
1 vote in favour.
The ayes are 64, the noes are 57. The motion is agreed to.
Dairy Industry Restructuring Amendment Bill, second reading.
This bill is set down for committee stage next sitting day. We call now Government Order of the Day number 5.
Debate of the performance and current